I 62 F. Woke up to the steady, rhythmic beeping of a machine I could not see. The first thing I felt was not pain, but a profound sense of exhaustion, as if I had run a race for days and finally collapsed at the finish line. My chest was tight, a dull ache that seemed to emanate from my very bones. A nurse with kind eyes told me the surgery had been a success. She said my heart was strong. I did not feel strong. I felt like a fragile piece of glass that had been shattered and glued back together. My daughter, Amelia, was there a few hours later. She held my hand, her own cool and trembling slightly. "Mom, you were so brave," she said. Her voice was a soft whisper, the one she used when she was a little girl and had a secret to share. I tried to smile, but my face felt stiff. "I am just glad it is over," I managed to say. "Me too," she said. "We were all so worried. Mark is in the waiting room. He did not want to crowd you." Mark was her husband, a man who always seemed to be calculating something behind his polite smile. I never trusted him fully, but Amelia adored him, and for her sake, I tried. I nodded, a small gesture that took more effort than it should have. For the next few days, Amelia was a constant presence. She brought me magazines I would never read and fluffed my pillows until they were perfect. She handled the doctors and the nurses, her voice filled with a confident authority that I found both impressive and a little unsettling. One afternoon, she came in with a stack of papers in a neat manila folder. She looked nervous. "Mom, there are just a few things we need to take care of," she said, pulling a chair close to my bed. "Some bills, some insurance forms. With you being out of commission, it is all falling behind." I looked at the papers. The words were blurry. "I cannot even read right now, sweetheart," I said. I know," she said quickly. "It is nothing important, really. Just permissions for the hospital to bill the insurance directly and a temporary power of attorney so I can pay your mortgage and utilities while you recover. It is only for medical and financial decisions while you are unable to make them. Mark said it is standard procedure." My mind was foggy from the medication. I trusted my daughter. Of course I did. She was my only child. I felt a pang of guilt for the flicker of doubt that Mark's name ignited. He was probably just trying to be helpful. "Okay, Amelia," I said. "Show me where to sign." She guided my hand, her fingers pressing down on mine to steady the pen. I scrawled a messy signature on 3 different pages. I did not read a single word. I just wanted to go back to sleep. I wanted the dull ache in my chest to disappear. She kissed my forehead, a gesture that felt more like a dismissal than affection. "You just rest, Mom," she said, gathering the papers. "I will take care of everything." I closed my eyes and drifted off, the image of her triumphant smile the last thing I saw in my mind. It was a strange thought to have, but it was there nonetheless. A sense of unease settled in my stomach, a feeling that had nothing to do with the surgery. I told myself it was the drugs. It had to be the drugs. My recovery was slow. I spent another week in the hospital and then was discharged to my home, with a visiting nurse scheduled to check on me daily. Amelia had arranged it all. She had also stocked my fridge and cleaned my house. On the surface, she was the perfect, doting daughter. But something felt off. She was always on her phone, stepping out of the room to take calls. When I asked who it was, she would wave her hand dismissively. "Just work, Mom," she would say. Or Mark, checking in. I wanted to ask more questions, but I was too tired to argue. The effort of simply getting out of bed and walking to the kitchen was monumental. I let her handle things. I let her take care of the mail, the bills, the phone calls. I put my trust in her completely. It was the biggest mistake of my life. The beach house was my sanctuary. My late husband, Robert, and I had bought it decades ago. It was a small, unassuming cottage on a quiet stretch of coast, but it held every happy memory I had. It was where we taught Amelia to swim, where we had bonfires on cool summer nights, where Robert held my hand and told me he would love me forever, just days before he passed away. The house was more than just a property. It was the keeper of my heart. After I had been home for about 2 weeks, I was starting to feel a little more like myself. The fog in my head was clearing. I decided I wanted to go to the beach house for a weekend once I was strong enough. Just the thought of feeling the sea breeze and hearing the waves crash on the shore made me feel better. I think I will call Brenda, I said to Amelia one morning. Brenda was my year-round neighbor at the beach, a lovely woman who kept an eye on the place for me during the off-season. Amelia froze, her hand hovering over the coffee pot. Brenda, she asked, why would you call her? To let her know I am thinking of coming down in a few weeks, I said. I want to make sure everything is okay with the house. Oh, Amelia said, turning her back to me. Everything is fine, Mom. I have been handling it. You do not need to bother Brenda. Her tone was sharp. It put me on edge. It is no bother, I said, reaching for the phone. I would like to talk to her. Amelia snatched the phone off the receiver before I could. Mom, please, she said, her voice strained. Just let me take care of things. You need to rest. The doctors said you should not have any stress. This is strange, I thought. Her reaction was completely out of proportion. I felt a cold knot of dread form in my stomach. What was she hiding? Amelia, give me the phone, I said, my voice firm. No, she said, clutching it to her chest. You are not well enough. I am just trying to protect you. We stood there in silence for a moment, a mother and daughter locked in a strange, unspoken battle. I saw fear in her eyes, but also something else. Defiance. I had never seen her look at me that way before. What have you done? I whispered, the question hanging in the air between us. She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I did what was best for you, she mumbled. The dread in my stomach turned into a churning sickness. I pushed myself up from the chair, my legs unsteady. I walked over to her and gently took the phone from her hands. She did not resist this time. She just stood there looking small and guilty. I dialed Brenda's number, my fingers trembling. She answered on the second ring. Brenda, it is Clara, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Clara. Oh, my goodness, she exclaimed. I have been so worried. I heard about your surgery. How are you feeling, dear? I am recovering, I said, slowly but surely. Brenda, I was thinking of coming down to the cottage in a few weeks. I just wanted to check that everything is in order. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. My heart started to pound against my ribs, a painful, frantic rhythm. Clara, Brenda said finally, her voice full of confusion. What do you mean? The house is not yours anymore. The words did not register at first. They were just sounds, meaningless and empty. What? I asked. It's sold, dear, Brenda said gently. About a week ago. I thought you knew. Your son-in-law, Mark, was here with the real estate agent and the new owners. A young couple from the city. They seem very nice. The phone slipped from my fingers and clattered to the floor. The room started to spin. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. Sold. The word echoed in my mind, a cruel and impossible sound. My beach house. My Robert's house. Sold. I turned to look at Amelia. She was crying, silent tears streaming down her face. She looked like a child who had been caught breaking a precious vase. But this was not a vase. This was my life. You sold my house, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The words felt foreign in my mouth. They were too monstrous to be real. Amelia rushed to my side, trying to help me into a chair. Mom, please sit down, she begged. You are going to make yourself sick. I pushed her hand away. I did not want her to touch me. Tell me it is not true, I said, my voice rising with each word. Tell me Brenda is mistaken. Tell me you did not sell my home while I was in the hospital fighting for my life. She sobbed, a raw, ugly sound. I did it for you, Mom, she cried. The house was too much for you to handle. The upkeep, the taxes. It was a source of stress. And we got a great price for it. The money will make your life so much easier. You will not have to worry about anything ever again. I stared at her, my mind reeling in disbelief. She was trying to frame this betrayal as an act of love. She was treating me like a child, like someone whose own life and memories were irrelevant. She had taken my sanctuary, the most precious thing Robert had left me, and turned it into a cash transaction. She had done it behind my back, using my moment of greatest weakness against me. The exhaustion I had felt since the surgery vanished, replaced by a surge of cold, hard anger. It was a feeling so intense it almost took my breath away. This is not over, I thought. I will not let this be the end of the story. Get out, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Mom, what? She stammered, her eyes wide with shock. Get out of my house, I repeated, pointing toward the door.
Now.
But Mom, I need to take care of you, she pleaded. You have done enough, I said, the words like ice.
Leave.
And take your husband with you. I do not want to see either of you again. She opened her mouth to argue, but then she saw the look on my face. The look of a mother who had just had her heart broken by her own child. She closed her mouth, picked up her purse, and walked out the door without another word. The silence she left behind was deafening. I sank into a chair, the anger draining away, leaving me hollow and empty. My house was gone. My daughter had betrayed me. I was alone. For a few hours, I let the grief wash over me. I cried for my husband, for my memories, for the daughter I thought I had. But as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across my living room, the grief started to curdle into something else. Resolve. Amelia and Mark had underestimated me. They saw me as a frail old woman, someone they could easily manipulate. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The first thing I did the next morning was call David. David had been Robert's lawyer and had become a dear friend to me after Robert passed. He was a kind, steady man with a sharp legal mind. I explained the situation to him, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and sorrow. He was silent for a long moment after I finished. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. Clara, I am so sorry, he said finally, his voice filled with genuine sympathy. This is unconscionable. Can they do this, David? Asked, my voice small. Can she just sell my house? It depends on the power of attorney you signed, he said. Do you have a copy of it? No, I said, feeling a fresh wave of despair. I signed it in the hospital. I was on so much medication. I did not even read it. That is what they were counting on, David said, his voice grim. Okay, here is what we need to do. First, I need you to formally revoke that power of attorney in writing. I will draft a letter for you. We will send it to Amelia and Mark via certified mail. That will prevent them from doing any more damage. Second, I will contact the real estate agent and the title company involved in the sale. I will put them on notice that the transaction was fraudulent. Third, we need to get a copy of the paperwork you signed. I will start that process immediately. His calm, methodical approach was reassuring. It made me feel like I was not fighting this battle alone. What about the house, David? I asked, my voice breaking. Can I get it back? It will be a fight, Clara, he said honestly. But we have a good case. You signed under duress, without full mental capacity. They took advantage of your medical condition. A judge will not look kindly on that. I felt a small spark of hope ignite within me. It was not much, but it was enough. Thank you, David, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you for everything. We are in this together, Clara, he said. Robert would have wanted me to look out for you. And I will. After I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of purpose I had not felt in years. I was no longer a victim. I was a fighter. I spent the rest of the day going through my old files, looking for anything that might help. I found the original deed to the beach house, the one with both my and Robert's names on it. I found old tax records and insurance policies. And then, in the back of a dusty filing cabinet, I found a thick, leather-bound portfolio. It was labeled the Robert Fairchild Trust. I had forgotten all about it. Robert had set it up years ago, with David's help. He had told me it was to protect our assets and make sure I was taken care of if anything happened to him. I had never read the full document. It was long and filled with legal jargon that made my head spin. Robert had given me a summary, and that had been enough for me at the time. I pulled the portfolio out and placed it on the dining room table. A strange feeling came over me, a sense of premonition. I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that the answer to my problems was somewhere within those pages. I tried to read through the trust document myself, but it was hopeless. The language was dense and confusing. I called David again and told him what I had found. "The trust," he said, a note of excitement in his voice. "Of course. How could I have forgotten?" Robert was very specific about the beach house. He considered it a legacy, not just an asset. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Bring the document to my office tomorrow morning, Clara," he said. "I have a feeling your daughter and son-in-law have made a very, very big mistake." The next morning, I drove to David's office, the heavy portfolio sitting on the passenger seat like a silent promise. I felt a nervous energy coursing through me. For the first time since the surgery, I felt truly alive. David greeted me with a warm hug and led me into his conference room. We sat at a long, polished table, the trust document laid out between us. David put on his reading glasses and began to pore over the pages, his brow furrowed in concentration. I waited, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. The silence in the room was thick with anticipation. After what felt like an eternity, David looked up, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Oh, Robert, you clever man," he said, shaking his head in admiration. "What is it?" I asked, leaning forward. "What did you find?" He turned the portfolio around and pointed to a section titled Article 4, Provisions Regarding Real Property. He slid a finger down the page until he came to a specific clause. "Read this, Clara," he said. I leaned in, my eyes scanning the text. It took me a moment to understand the legal phrasing, but then the meaning became crystal clear. My breath caught in my throat. The clause stated that the beach house was the primary asset of the trust. It was to remain in my possession for the duration of my natural life. It could not be sold, transferred, or encumbered in any way without my express written consent, witnessed by the trustee, which was David. But that was not the most important part. The next paragraph was the real bombshell. It was what Robert had called the protection clause. It stated, in no uncertain terms, that if any beneficiary of the trust attempted to sell or dispose of the property during my lifetime, that beneficiary would be immediately and irrevocably disinherited from the trust. Their entire share would be forfeited and redistributed to the remaining beneficiaries. Since Amelia was the sole beneficiary, this meant everything. Everything Robert and I had built, everything we had planned to leave for her future, would be gone. But it got even better. The clause went on to say that in such an event, the ownership of the beach house itself would immediately revert to a charity Robert had established in his father's name, the Fairchild Foundation for Marine Biology. I looked up at David, my eyes wide with disbelief. "Does this mean what I think it means?" I whispered. David's smile was grim but triumphant. "It means," he said, "that your daughter did not just try to sell your house. She gave it away. And she disinherited herself in the process. The sale is completely void. The title was never hers to transfer. The property belongs to the foundation now, at least on paper. We can unwind that part easily enough, but the disinheritance, that is ironclad." Robert made sure of it. I felt a dizzying mix of emotions. Relief, so profound it almost made me weep. Vengeance, cold and sharp. And a deep, aching sadness for my daughter. She had been so blinded by greed, so manipulated by her husband, that she had destroyed her own future. She had thrown away a lifetime of love and security for a quick payday. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice trembling. David leaned back in his chair, his expression turning serious. "Now," he said, "we let them think they have won. We let them get comfortable. And then we lower the boom." The plan David laid out was simple but brilliant. We would not act immediately. We would let Amelia and Mark believe they had gotten away with it. We would let them spend some of the money they thought they had. We needed them to dig their own hole a little deeper. In the meantime, David would prepare the legal notices. He would contact the board of the Fairchild Foundation and inform them of their unexpected acquisition. He would prepare a cease and desist letter for the buyers of the house. And he would draft a formal notification of disinheritance for Amelia. They will be served with all of it at the same time, David explained. They will not know what hit them. I agreed to the plan. The idea of immediate confrontation was tempting, but I knew David was right. A quiet, calculated strike would be far more effective than an emotional outburst. So I went home and I waited. It was the hardest thing I have ever had to do. I did not answer Amelia's calls or respond to her texts. She sent me messages filled with feigned concern, asking if I was okay, telling me she was worried about me. Each one felt like a fresh betrayal. Mark sent a few texts as well, his tone more demanding. He wanted to know where the rest of the sale proceeds were. He said they were supposed to have been transferred to a new joint account he had set up for me and Amelia. An account I knew nothing about. An account he undoubtedly had full control over. I ignored him too. A week went by. Then another. I spent my days regaining my strength, walking a little farther each day. I spoke with David regularly, and he kept me updated on his progress. The legal paperwork was almost ready. The board of the foundation was shocked but supportive. The stage was being set. One afternoon, I received a call from Brenda, my neighbor at the beach. "Clara, I do not want to be a gossip," she said, her voice hesitant. "But something strange is going on at your old place." "What is it, Brenda?" I asked, my heart quickening. "Well, the new owners, the young couple, they are gone," she said. "A moving truck came yesterday and took all their things. And now your son-in-law, Mark, is there. He has been there all day, with a crew of workers. They are tearing things out. It looks like they're doing a major renovation." I felt a surge of fury. They were not just selling my house, they were gutting it. They were destroying the physical embodiment of my memories. They were erasing Robert. "Thank you for telling me, Brenda," I said, my voice tight. "You have been a good friend." I hung up and immediately called David. I told him what was happening. "That is it," he said, his voice cold with anger. "They have gone too far. We are not waiting any longer. I am filing everything tomorrow morning. It is time to end this." The next day, I woke up with a sense of calm determination. Today was the day. David had arranged for a process server to deliver the documents to Amelia and Mark's home at precisely 10 o'clock. He had also arranged for a locksmith to meet me at the beach house at 11. David and a representative from the foundation's board would be there with me. We were taking back my house. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple but elegant dress. I wanted to look strong. I wanted them to see that I was not the frail, helpless woman they had tried to victimize. As I drove to the coast, I thought about Amelia. I wondered if she had any idea what was about to happen. Did she feel any guilt? Any remorse? Or was she just happy with the money? I realized, with a pang of sadness, that I did not know my own daughter anymore. The drive was long, but it felt like it passed in an instant. I pulled up to the beach house and saw David's car already parked in the driveway. A large, formidable-looking man stood beside him. He was the locksmith. A third man in a suit stood a little ways off. He introduced himself as Mr. Harrison, a board member from the Fairchild Foundation. The front yard was a mess. There was a pile of rubble near the porch. The beautiful rose bushes Robert had planted for me had been torn out. I felt a fresh wave of anger. I looked at the front door. The lock had been changed. Mark was inside. We could hear the sound of a power saw whining. "Are you ready, Clara?" David asked gently. I took a deep breath and nodded. "I am ready." The locksmith went to work. It took him less than a minute to open the door. We stepped inside. The house was barely recognizable. The walls had been stripped down to the studs. The beautiful hardwood floors Robert and I had installed ourselves were covered in dust and debris. My furniture was gone. In the center of the living room stood Mark, holding a reciprocating saw. He looked up, his face a mask of shock and confusion when he saw us. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his eyes darting between me, David, and the other men. "This is private property." "On the contrary, Mr. Evans," David said, stepping forward. You are the one who is trespassing. Mark laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. What are you talking about? I own this house. Or rather, my wife and her mother do. That is where you are mistaken, David said, his voice level. He handed Mark a thick envelope. You have just been served. Mark ripped open the envelope, his confident smirk slowly fading as he read the first page. His face went pale. He looked from the paper to me, his eyes wide with dawning horror. What is this? He stammered. What is this legal nonsense? It is not nonsense, I said, my voice clear and strong. I stepped forward, feeling the eyes of everyone in the room on me. This was my moment. It is the trust document my late husband created. A document you clearly never bothered to read. I am in control now. The thought is a cool, clear wave washing over the hot anger. I will not let him see me shake. You thought you could steal my home, I continued, my voice gaining strength with every word. You preyed on me when I was at my weakest. You convinced my daughter to betray me. You tore apart this house, a place filled with memories you could never understand. This is a trick, Mark sputtered, waving the papers in his hand. A legal maneuver. It will not stand up in court. Oh, it will, David said calmly. The trust is irrevocable. The clause is airtight. The sale of this house was illegal. You committed fraud, Mr. Evans. And as for your wife, he paused for effect. By initiating this fraudulent sale, she has triggered Article 4, Section B of the trust. The disinheritance clause. Mark's jaw dropped. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. The arrogant bully was gone, replaced by a desperate, cornered animal. Clara, please, he said, his voice suddenly soft and wheedling. There has been a misunderstanding. Amelia loves you. She was just trying to help. She helped you. I corrected him. She helped you try to steal my legacy. And in doing so, she threw away her own. Every penny, Mark. Every single asset in the trust. It is all gone. She gets nothing. The color drained completely from his face. He finally understood. He had not just lost the house. He had lost everything. The big score he had been counting on to solve all his problems had vanished into thin air. And as for the house, Mr. Harrison from the foundation spoke for the first time, his voice deep and authoritative. As of the moment you initiated the illegal sale, ownership reverted to the Fairchild Foundation. This property now belongs to us. We will, of course, be deeding it back to Mrs. Fairchild. But as for you, Mr. Evans, you are trespassing. I suggest you and your workers leave immediately. We will be billing you for the damages you have caused. Mark just stood there, speechless. The power saw dangled from his hand, forgotten. He had been so sure of his victory, so confident in his manipulation, that he had never considered the possibility of failure. He had underestimated me. He had underestimated Robert. Get out of my house, I said, the words echoing my command to Amelia a few weeks earlier. But this time, they were not born of grief. They were born of strength. Mark finally moved. He dropped the saw with a clatter and stumbled out the door, his crew of workers following close behind, their faces a mixture of confusion and alarm. I stood in the wreckage of my living room, the dust motes dancing in the afternoon sun. The house was damaged, but it was not destroyed. Like me, it could be rebuilt. I turned to David, a single tear tracing a path through the dust on my cheek. Thank you, I whispered. He put a comforting arm around my shoulder. Robert would be proud of you, Clara, he said. Very proud. The aftermath was a flurry of legal activity. David's team worked quickly to untangle the mess Mark had created. The fraudulent sale was officially voided. The poor young couple who had bought the house were victims in their own right. They had given Mark a substantial down payment in cash, money that had seemingly vanished. They were furious and threatened their own legal action against him. It turned out Mark was in deep financial trouble, with gambling debts and failed business ventures he had hidden from Amelia. The sale of my house was his desperate, last-ditch effort to save himself. Amelia called me a few days later. She was hysterical. Mom, what did you do? She shrieked into the phone. Mark said you are taking everything away. He said I have been disinherited. That cannot be true. Daddy would never do that to me. Her words cut me to the quick. She was not sorry for what she had done. She was only sorry she had been caught. Your father was a wise man, Amelia, I said, my voice cold and distant. He knew that sometimes people need to be protected from their own greed. He put that clause in the trust to protect me. He never imagined he would be protecting me from you. But it was Mark, she cried, her voice turning into a pathetic whine. He told me what to do. He said it was the only way to make sure you were taken care of. I did not understand the papers, Mom. I just signed what he put in front of me. You are a grown woman, Amelia, I said, my patience wearing thin. You are not a child. You knew what you were doing was wrong. You knew you were going behind my back. You made a choice. And now you have to live with the consequences. But I will have nothing, she sobbed. Mark's creditors are calling constantly. We are going to lose our house. Please, Mom, you have to help me. You cannot let this happen. I felt a flicker of the old maternal instinct, the urge to soothe her, to fix her problems. But I quickly extinguished it. She had shown me who she was. I had to believe her. I cannot help you, Amelia, I said, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. The trust is irrevocable. What is done is done. You and your husband created this mess. You will have to find your own way out of it. I could hear Mark shouting in the background, telling her what to say. The puppet master was still trying to pull the strings. This is not over, she said, her voice suddenly changing, hardening into a spiteful imitation of her husband's. We will fight this. We will see you in court. I will see you there, I said, and I hung up the phone. The conversation left me feeling drained and sad, but also resolute. The bond with my daughter was broken. Perhaps it had been broken for a long time, and I had just been too blind to see it. The next few months were spent rebuilding. I hired a contractor to repair the damage to the beach house. As I watched them put up new walls and lay down new floors, I felt a sense of renewal. I was not just restoring a house. I was reclaiming my life. I chose new furniture, new paint colors, new curtains. I filled the house with things that made me happy, things that were mine alone. I kept a few of Robert's favorite things, his old armchair, his collection of nautical maps. But the house was different now. It was my sanctuary, not just ours. David handled the legal battles. Mark and Amelia tried to contest the trust, but their case was laughed out of court. The judge was scathing in his assessment of their actions. The investigation into Mark's financial dealings uncovered a pattern of fraud and deceit. He was facing serious criminal charges. Their house went into foreclosure. Their life, built on a foundation of lies and greed, came crashing down around them. I never heard from Amelia again. I saw her once from a distance, going into a grocery store. She looked thin and tired. Our eyes met for a fleeting second. I saw a flash of anger and resentment in her face, but no remorse. She turned and hurried away. One beautiful spring morning, I drove down to the newly restored beach house. It was perfect. The sun streamed through the new windows, and the scent of salt and roses filled the air. I walked out onto the porch and looked out at the ocean. The waves crashed against the shore in a steady, timeless rhythm. I thought about Robert and the love we had shared in this place. I thought about the betrayal and the fight to get it back. I had lost a daughter, but I had found a strength within myself I never knew I possessed. I was not a victim. I was a survivor. They thought they could erase me, but they had only made me stronger. They had finally learned what it feels like to be small, to have everything you thought was yours taken away in an instant. And as I sat there, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. A quiet, hard-won peace. My house was safe. My future was secure. And I was finally free. My days settled into a new rhythm, one defined by my own choices, not by the needs or demands of others. I spent long weekends at the beach house, reading books, walking on the sand, and talking to Brenda. We became close friends, two women who understood the value of a quiet life and a good neighbor. She never asked about Amelia, but I knew she understood. Her silent support was a greater comfort than any words could have been. David and I had dinner once a month. He would update me on the legal loose ends, though there were fewer and fewer of them. Mark had taken a plea bargain, agreeing to a short prison sentence in exchange for his cooperation in a larger fraud investigation. His life of clever schemes was over. One evening, over a glass of wine, David grew pensive. "You know, Clara," he said, "Robert worried about this. Not specifically this, of course. He could never have imagined Amelia would do such a thing. But he worried about her being impressionable, especially when it came to Mark." "He never told me that," I said, surprised. "He did not want to worry you," David replied. "And he did not want to interfere in your relationship with your daughter. But he saw something in Mark from the very beginning. A hollowness. A hunger that could never be satisfied. That is why he built so many protections into the trust. He called it the Mark-proof clause." I smiled sadly. "He was always looking out for me, even after he was gone." "He loved you very much, Clara," David said. "And he trusted you. He knew you had the strength to handle whatever came your way." His words were a balm to my soul. The fight had taken its toll. There were nights I woke up with my heart pounding, the memory of Amelia's betrayal fresh in my mind. There were moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if I had been too harsh, too unforgiving. But David's story reminded me that I was not just fighting for a house. I was honoring my husband's legacy. I was upholding the trust he had placed in me. Several months later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from a law firm I did not recognize. My first instinct was to throw it away, assuming it was another legal headache. But my curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. The letter was from a lawyer representing Amelia. It stated that she was filing for divorce from Mark. It went on to say that she was deeply in debt, with no assets to her name. The final paragraph was a carefully worded plea. She was asking me to consider dissolving the disinheritance clause and restoring her as a beneficiary of the trust. She claimed she had been a victim of coercive control and was not responsible for her actions. I read the letter 3 times. My hands were steady. My heart was calm. The words did not stir any pity in me. They only confirmed what I already knew. Her regret was not for her betrayal, but for its consequences. She was not seeking my forgiveness. She was seeking my money. I picked up the phone and called David. "I got a letter from Amelia's lawyer," I said, without any preamble. "I thought you might," he said. "They sent a copy to my office as well. It is a desperate move, Clara. It has no legal merit." "I know," I said. "But I want to respond." "What do you want to say?" he asked. "I want to say no," I said. "But I want to say it in a way that leaves no room for doubt, no possibility of future appeals. I want to close this door forever." David was quiet for a moment. "I understand," he said. "Let me draft a response. It will be polite, professional, and absolutely final." 2 days later, he sent me the draft. It was a masterpiece of legal finality. It acknowledged receipt of their letter. It reiterated the irrevocable nature of the trust and the disinheritance clause. It stated, in clear and unambiguous terms, that I had no intention of challenging the trust my late husband had created. And it concluded by stating that I considered the matter closed and would not be responding to any further correspondence on the subject. It was perfect. Cold, impersonal, and absolute. I told David to send it. I never heard from her lawyer again. The final door had been shut and locked. I sometimes wondered what became of her. Did she get back on her feet? Did she learn from her mistakes? Or did she simply find another person to manipulate, another well of kindness to poison? I realized it did not matter. Her life was her own to live or to ruin. My life was mine. I had spent so many years defining myself as a wife and a mother. Now I was just me, Clara. And I was discovering that I was more than enough. I started volunteering at the local library. I joined a gardening club. I took a painting class, something I had always wanted to do, but never had the time for. I filled my days with small joys and simple pleasures. I found a new kind of peace, a peace that did not depend on anyone else. One afternoon, while working in the garden behind the beach house, I found a small, weathered stone half buried in the dirt. I cleaned it off and saw that Robert had carved our initials into it, surrounded by a heart. He must have done it years ago. I held the stone in my hand, its weight familiar and comforting. The memories were still there, in the house, in the garden, in the sound of the sea. But they were no longer painful. They were just a part of me, a part of the story of a life that had been broken but had healed stronger than before. My health improved dramatically. The stress of the betrayal had been a heavy burden on my already fragile heart, but once it was lifted, I felt a new sense of vitality. My doctor was amazed at my recovery. He said I had the heart of a woman half my age. I knew it was not just medical science. It was the healing power of peace and self-respect. I had fought for my home, yes, but more importantly, I had fought for myself. I had refused to be a victim. I had refused to be erased. The Fairchild Foundation for Marine Biology became a new passion for me. I joined the board, taking the seat that had been reserved for Robert. I learned about their research, their conservation efforts, their work to protect the very ocean that my beach house overlooked. I found a new purpose in helping to guide the foundation, in making sure that Robert's legacy of kindness and curiosity continued to make a difference in the world. It was a way of honoring him that went beyond just protecting a piece of property. It was about carrying his spirit forward. Sometimes, when I am sitting on the porch at dusk, watching the sky turn from blue to gold to purple, I think about the concept of inheritance. Amelia thought it was about money, about assets, about things you could buy and sell. She never understood that the real inheritance Robert left her was not in a trust document. It was in the memories we made in that house. It was in the values he tried to teach her. Honesty, loyalty, love. That was the true treasure. And she had thrown it all away for nothing. I do not know if I will ever fully forgive her. Forgiveness is a complex thing, but I have let go of the anger. It was a heavy weight, and I am lighter without it. I have my home. I have my health. I have my friends and my new purpose. My life is full. I stopped giving warnings or second chances to people who showed me who they were. I learned that some betrayals are not meant to be overcome. They are meant to be survived. They are meant to teach you to lock your doors, not just on your house, but on the parts of your heart that are too precious to be broken again. They finally learned what it feels like to be powerless, to have their future decided by someone else. They learned that some things, once broken, can never be put back together again. And I learned that I was strong enough to pick up the pieces and build a new life, a better life, on my own terms. The beeping of the heart monitor had been the first sound of my new life, a steady rhythm promising a future. It was a promise I had kept,